The Tale of Melon City. Friends, this poem is not an original story created by Vikram Seth. It is actually a retelling of a traditional Sufi tale from his travels, which he learned from an Indian author and teacher, Idris Shah. Vikram Seth then adapted this story into his signature rhyming couplet form to craft the poem we read today. Let's see the key aspects of the poem. It mocks hollow justice and the weak bureaucracy. It criticizes public disinterest and irresponsible behavior. The final joke is on the citizens, not the king. Their desire for a trouble-free life is so strong that they accept to be ruled by a melon fruit. If you like the explanation, hit the like button and subscribe for more such helpful and interesting videos. For the poem's critical analysis and poetic devices, watch part 2, link in the description box. Now let us understand the poem paragraph-wise. The Tale of Melon City. Stanza 1. The city which the poet is talking about was ruled by a just and placid king, which means fair-minded and calm. The king wanted to make his city look impressive, so, one day, he ordered for an arch to be built on the main road of the town. He felt that it would be a good sight to look at, and it would motivate the onlookers. Friends, here the arch serves no practical purpose but only glorifying the ruler. The workmen build it without question, motivated not by wages or purpose, but solely because he was the king. This blind, unthinking obedience shows the passive mentality of the people. Stanza 2. Since it was the king who ordered for it to be built, the workmen followed his orders and constructed the arch. The king, with a grand ceremony, goes to inaugurate the newly built arch. Disaster! The arch was built too low. The king's crown gets knocked right off his head. A major embarrassment. He felt humiliated, and his calm expressions were instantly changed, indicating extreme displeasure. He considered it a moment of dishonor, and ordered for the chief of builders to be executed by hanging. To fulfill the king's orders, ropes and gallows were put in order. Friends, here we see that the king's fake calmness shatters the moment the poorly built arch knocks the crown from his head. Declaring it a disgrace or disrespect, he demands a hanging, proving that his justice does not come from wisdom, but it comes from a hurt ego. Stanza 3. The chief of builders was found and brought to be executed. He was presented before the king. On seeing the king, the chief of builders immediately passed the blame, saying that it was the workmen who were at fault. The king immediately called it off and declared if so is the case, then the workmen must be hanged. This gave a shock to the workmen. They pointed out that it was not their fault, but the bricks were not of the right size. And so, the workmen cleverly blamed the masons who made the bricks. Stanza 4. On hearing that it was the bricks that were of the wrong size, the king called for the masons. The masons put the blame on the architect, and thus, the architect was called for. Friends, this circular blame game is a piercing satire on bureaucratic systems, where responsibility is a hot potato that no one wants to hold, and where the highest authority is often fully responsible. Stanza 5. The king tells the architect that he considers him the one at fault, and he must be executed. The architect delivers the masterstroke. He reminds the king that he himself had ordered some last-minute changes to the design. So, technically, the fault is the king's. This indirectly indicated that it was the king who was responsible for the wrongly built arch. The king grew angry and confused. He can't blame himself, but since he was just and placid, he thought it would be best to consult someone in such a confusing situation. So, he asks for advice. Thus, he ordered them to get the wisest person alive. Friends, here we see that, actually confused and confronted with his own guilt, the king panics and summons the wisest man in the country. Stanza 6. They found the wisest man, but he had to be carried to the royal court, for he was so old that he could neither walk nor see properly. He is called wise, but his actual advice that he gave proves he is not wise at all. Actually, age doesn't define or guarantee wisdom. He finally spoke in his extremely shaky voice that the one at fault must be executed, and since it is the arch that struck off the king's crown, thus the arch must be hanged. Friends, see. The entire poem uses a mock-serious tone to highlight absurdity, presenting this man as a wise elder, only to have him give the most ridiculous counsel, is classic satirical sarcasm. The wisdom of the state appears to be as hollow as its justice. The wisest man is an ancient, ill elder who can neither see nor walk. He is chosen only and only because of his age. His profound verdict? To hang the arch itself. The scene satirizes the blind reverence for tradition and age over true wisdom. Stanza 7. After listening to the wise man's opinion, the arch was being taken for public execution when suddenly one of the ministers of the royal court raised an objection. According to him, it would be disgraceful to hang something that touched the head of their mighty king. The king also found it appropriate. By this time, the crowd became unsettled. They wanted execution of the one who is at fault. The king, being just and placid, recognized the temper of his people and declared that they must postpone the process of deciding who is guilty. He further added that if the nation wants a hanging, it will be done without further delay. Friends, see how this chilling shift shows a leader who would rather sacrifice an innocent just to please the public? Next, they start measuring people's height because of the king's absurd insistence that someone must be hanged to satisfy justice, as the noose has already been prepared at a fixed size. Stanza 8. Each man was called and measured one by one. Some are too thin, some too fat, and some shorter in height. Since the noose was set up at quite a high point, and the only man tall enough to fit in the noose was the one and only, the king. Finally, they had found someone to be executed. The king. And their king was hanged by the official force of law. Friends, did you see the irony? They cannot hang something that has touched the king's head, but how convincingly they agreed to hang the king himself. Stanza 9. The ministers of the royal court heaved a sigh of relief as they found someone to be put to death for the faulty arch. They feared that if they would have not found someone, the disorderly crowd would begin questioning the power of the authorities. Long live the king, everyone said. Friends here, it brings out the irony because the king they were hailing for was no longer alive. They wish a long life for their king, but on the other hand, they were relaxed to have found someone to execute even if it was their very own king. Stanza 10. With the king dead, the ministers need a new one. At first, the ministers were indecisive as to how to choose their new king. But since they were practical-minded men, they decided to follow their custom and, so, they sent out the official messengers to declare that their next ruler will be chosen by the one who passes the city gate next. The one chosen by him will be declared king with due ceremony, as it was the custom of that place. Friends, see how the people of the place preferred to go by the custom rather than wisdom. Stanza 11. The next to pass the city gate was a man who was actually an idiot. The guards stopped him and asked him to name their next king. An idiot as he was, he answered, a melon. Not to call it his mistake or anyone else's, this was his fixed reply to all the questions, as the man was fond of melons. The ministers crowned a melon, believing that it is now going to rule over their city. They set the melon on the throne and declared him king. Friends, that person is an idiot whose answer to every question is melon, simply because he likes them. How foolish it is to have believed a foolish statement from an utter foolish man. Stanza 12. Now the melon was declared the king many years ago, and now when anyone asks the people of the city about how it all happened, they simply call it a customary choice. It means that their custom and tradition compelled them to make a melon their king. But now, they are more than happy with their king being a melon, because the people live in peace and enjoy freedom. They are flourishing with no interference by their king. Friends, this ending mocks two extremes: a mindless ruler and a public so carefree that they prefer a passive fruit to rule over them. The well-established principle of laissez-faire here is not good policy, but a symbol of failed leadership. Laissez-faire means the policy of not interfering. It refers to a system where people are allowed to act freely without government interference. In the end, the people preferred a silent, harmless fruit over a foolish human who would start more trouble. This silly ending is the poem's sharpest joke. After so much chaos caused by a king's pride, the citizens decided that the best ruler is the one who does nothing at all. So, what's the conclusion? The poem's ultimate target is not the ruler, but the ruled. The citizens' complete indifference is the main idea. They happily accept a melon as their king because it guarantees them peace and liberty without interference. The city is now famously called Melon City, not because of any great wisdom, but because of this bizarre custom they blindly follow.